Hey guys, it's Dan. Welcome back. I have a bit of a treat for you, which is that Victrix has been in contact with me and agreed to not only send their newly released Medieval Mounted Knight box, but to tide us over until those start shipping. They also sent me their also recently released Greek Hoplites set, and I thought I would do a quick review and unboxing video for you guys. So again, big thanks to Victrix for sponsoring this video, sending this box to us to take a look at. They also were kind enough to send a set of little Big Men Studio transfers, and I'm going to do at least one other video showing maybe some finished painted models with these applied, so you can see just how spectacular they are. But I also think I want to do a whole separate video on little Big Men transfers in their own right, because I actually have some footage that I took. I've just been sitting on of me making a banner out of a little Big Men Studio transfer. So I think that it probably warrants a whole separate video talking about these, because they're not like any transfers maybe you've dealt with like from Games Workshop, other companies that produce water slide transfers. These go on much more like a temporary tattoo, and the end result I think is pretty stunning. So we'll take a look at these separately in a different video, but again, big thanks to Victrix for sending these as well. And let's talk today just about their Greek Hoplite box. So full disclosure, I've already actually taken this out of their packaging. I'll talk about the packaging here in a second, but I like to, with all my unboxings, take a look at the sprues very closely before I start rambling about them. So that's why you see them sitting out like this. Victrix also produces several other Hoplite boxes. In case you're not familiar with the range and you're perusing the website, this is now one of, I think, 6. 4 of them are among the first boxes they ever produced. It was the Spartan Hoplites, Thebans, Mercenary, and Athenians. And then they have a box of unarmored Hoplites that came a little bit later, but are very similar in terms of style and scale to those original 4. So this box, or bag as it were, again, we'll talk about the packaging in a second, I think was released to not replace those, but I think complement them and introduce a kit that has miniatures that are more in, first of all, more dynamic, like attacking poses, as is implied here, but also in terms of scale and design, maybe better complementing their more recently released ancient boxes, call them the Carthaginians, the Persians that they've put out. So I think that these are probably a better fit. But again, at the end of this video, I have quite a few of those older Hoplite models in my collection. I'm going to bring those in by way of comparison with some completed miniatures, so you can take a look for yourself. So that's what this kit is, and I think what it's for. 48 models, excuse me. In terms of how they're shipped, they come in a bag. I think everything after their Viking box come in these bags, and I was gonna stuff them back in this bag, but I didn't want to inadvertently snap anything. But the way that they ship is just like this, and if you see them in a retail setting, they're going to be hanging usually like you would see on a blister pack, just like from that little tab there. So the main advantage to this is that you can see everything, and they're just at a glance, seeing it hanging on the shelf. You don't have to open up the box to see what the contents are. You can just see what the sprue contents are. The disadvantage, of course, as I've seen listed online anywhere, is the potential for breakage. And I got to tell you though, again, it's an anecdote that I've purchased probably like 40 boxes of Victrix, many of them direct from the company, so shipped from the UK to the United States. I've never had anything break shipped in a bag ever, or even bent or anything like that. So if anyone has, I'm sorry, but I have not. I've never had any issues with that. So take it or leave it. That's how Victrix currently ships its stuff, and their Victrix, the Greek Hoplite box is no exception to that. On the back of this though, you can see, again, there's not much to review in terms of box art. I think that's very well done. There's a more detailed version of this, which are kind of assembly instructions toward the middle here. So I'll separate that out. Again, there's 8 sprues, 6 models a piece, no command sprue in this one. They have been putting command sprues out in some of their ancient sets, some not. Like the Carthaginians that I have did come with a command sprue, but this one does not. So 6 models a piece, 8 sprues. So we'll separate one out. I also want to take a look at these instructions with you for a second, because if you're new to wargaming or if you're not familiar with Victrix, at a glance this might look really daunting, because they look like a proper schematic. However, once you drill down into it, you'll see, first of all, it's a very simple system, right? B for body, A for arm, and then heads over here. There's some sets, like the Vikings, I think they're Saxons, they're Normans that I've had. There are certain heads that go with certain bodies. That's not the case here. As you can see, there's no heads that are unique to any particular bodies. And you can see what this really is a set of recommendations, right? So if you're looking at body 5, they're saying any of these weapon arms and any of these shield arms could go with body 5. And when you look at the sprues up close, and again, we'll take a look at the sprues in more detail in just a moment, you can see, like, here's body 5, and then all you would need to do if you're dealing with body 5 is look for any of these arms to go with it, right? So it's not actually dissimilar from what we've seen with War Games Atlantic with the firearm arms that are right arm, left arm, and they're supposed to go with specific combinations. It's really no different here. And I got to tell you, from putting a lot of these boxes together, I view these more as recommendations, because there's plenty of combinations, and I'm sure this kit will be no different, but plenty of combinations from the prior boxes where I disregarded this entirely, and I was putting together, you know, various weapon arm combinations that weren't on this schematic, and they looked perfectly fine. There were no proportion issues or anything like that. The only times I found that might be an issue were with like specialty weapons, like a two-handed Dane axe or something like that, that was clearly designed to go with a specific body. However, again, from some of like the spears, the sword arms, axe arms, things like on the Viking set, I never had any issue with combining certain things with bodies that they didn't necessarily recommend. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the sprue itself. I've now mentioned, I think, several times, it's 8 sprues of 6 models, and we're going to take a brief overview shot here, and then we'll look at some of the individual components in more detail. So if you've never dealt with the other Victrix Hoplite kits, one thing I might say against them is, well, I guess there's 2 things I would say against them. That's probably pretty much it. Is that the weapons, other than the sword arms in that box, but the weapons for the spears are detached from the hands, which makes it a little bit frustrating to put them together, and I think leads to like kind of like Lego hand syndrome in a lot of cases. But 2 is that if you're not getting a specialty box like the Spartans or the Thebans, where they have unique heads, like the mercenaries in the Athenian box, I found that the head options were a little bit limited, especially if you wanted sort of the like Corinthian style helms or helms with crests, plumes. But you can see a crazy number of head options, right? Head options too with these plumes. So no shortage of those there. And actually, I'm going to be picking up a set of it as well to review and to combine with this box. But they've released a whole separate box of, I think, like 54 heads to complement this kit with various other like mercenary style helmets, more exotic helmets, what have you, that further increase the total number of combinations that you could have. So straight away, this fixes, I think, both of the weaknesses of the prior earlier kits, which is that you have sculpted spear hands, so you're never going to have anything detached, and less risk of breakage when you're just assembling the model. And again, just the sheer number of head options is much stronger in this box compared to any of the previous Hoplite boxes. So in terms of bodies, again, there's 6 bodies per sprue. You'll notice right away that one of them is detached. And again, this is something we've been seeing more and more with War Games Atlantic. We've seen this before. I'm not reviewing it together, but with especially on command sprues, I found Victrix likes to do this because it allows for a lot more dynamic poses for certain models. So especially with some of these kind of like attacking style poses, it's very cool to see this. And again, from dealing with Victrix kits before, there's never any issue with like overlap here. That's the only concern I might have with models like this, is if they don't match up, they're not flush. And you can see that Victrix are very cognizant of that. Sculpting, again, is super detailed, super crisp. I don't think we've looked at a Victrix box together before, but this is pretty incredible in terms of the detail that they achieve, especially on like linen armor. Some of these bits here, little bits of ribbon. Yeah, just really beautifully done. The other thing that's interesting in terms of the body designs, just talking about those specifically, is that in addition to linen cuirasses, it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, regular linen cuirasses here. There's 2 scaled ones, which don't exist on the older style Hoplite boxes. Those don't show up at all. And the sculpted cuirass that's over here on the left-hand side, you can see there, excellent detail again, very nice. I think is better proportioned than the one that exists on the older style Hoplite set. And again, I keep referring to that set because I think the comparison is natural. But I'll bring some of those models in at the end once I've assembled maybe one sprue of these, and we can take a look at how they compare to one another. So sculpting is excellent, as it again is implied by the box art. Some of these poses, you can even tell by the way that the spear arms are leveled, are intended to be attacking poses. Some of them are intended to be kind of like more of a marching pose. So this one looks more like he's just advancing. But some of these are obviously designed to be thrusting a spear or attacking in some way. So it's very cool to see that kind of dynamic poses just in the bodies without any weapons attached. In terms of head options, right, again, we mentioned that there's a ton of heads within this set, and again, a separate box that complements this set that drives the number of heads up even further. In terms of the total number of heads, though, again, it's a little misleading because of the number of crests. You've got 6 down here, 3 up here, 9, and then another 6 up here. So 14 different heads to 6 bodies, just from the box itself, without even having to go into the separate box that they released to complement them. But in terms of face detail and sculpting, it's really excellent. You can see some of the helms are more like closed style Corinthian helms, right? The crests are all superbly detailed. You can see pieces coming down here. And then facial hair is very good here for some of the more open style helmets. Up here too. Again, different styles of helm here, kind of like a mercenary style helmet. Clearly trying to make this kit as versatile as possible, I think, so you can represent hoplites from various parts of the Mediterranean, various time periods. It's a lot of detail, really excellently done. And one bit, maybe you noticed from the instructions, and maybe you noticed up here, looks like that's the guy that has a long, or can have a long beard coming out from underneath of his helm, which is a cool addition and not something that we see in the other kits that are for hoplites. Another thing I wanted to mention, I spoke in error in a previous video. I think it was in the Warlord Games Phalangite box, where I brought out one of the linen cuirass bodies from their Carthaginian set and said that they were reusing some of those bodies in the Greek set. And I'll bring that one out at the end too, just so you can see that that's not the case. These are all unique bodies to this box. Like, I thought it was this linen cuirass that they were reusing from the Carthaginian set, but it's not. It's a totally different body. So we'll take a look at some of those too, just so you can see that this is, if it were to be blended, say, with their own Phalangite kit or with the Carthaginians, you could really have an incredible number of Greek bodies, especially if you're combining with like the head bits from this kit or the head bits from the box I keep talking about, where they're just supplying heads. In terms of weapon options, you can see it's broken up between spears here and swords down here. The swords, it looks like there's 7 sword arms. 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there are various different styles. Again, short thrusting spears, kind of like earlier Trojan styles, Copus. Again, they're all a little bit different. It's very cool to see that kind of variety within the set. And then tons of spear options as well. In terms of like what spears are in the kit, you've got, it looks like 15, some down here. And again, Victrix recommends certain arms to go with certain bodies if you're trying to achieve kind of natural looking poses. But as I said at the beginning, I mix and match kind of as I please and just kind of go for poses that look correct with proportions that look correct. And I find lots of combinations that Victrix might not necessarily recommend. Yeah, in terms of the sculpting on them, hand details are all fantastic. You can see some of them have some jewelry, some bracelets sculpted on, which is always a cool thing to see. Yeah, really excellent. And the sword details are all great as well. So I've mentioned before, I always like to see that where you could theoretically arm everybody in the unit the exact same way. So if I wanted a unit of 48 models all with sword and shield, I can do that. And not only that, but I will actually have bits left over at that point. You can certainly do the same thing with spears with this particular box. In terms of other accessories that come with the kit, there's a handful of scabbards. You can see them scattered around here. So there's actually 8 scabbards depending on what style you want to go with. There's 2 up here. There's 2 down here, 2 here, and 2 here. So once again, more scabbards than there are bodies for the particular kit. And then shields, there's 6 shields, again, for 6 bodies. And then you've got your left arms to hold shields out here. And again, they have more left arms than you'll need for these 6 individual bodies. So you can have them, you know, having the shield kind of angled away from the body, close to the body, according to what you'll see here. So really stunning sculpting work, as I've seen consistently from Victrix over the years. Another fantastic addition. What I'd like to do now, as I have been mentioning over and over again, is I'd like to build some of these for you, and I want to bring in some models from both their Carthaginian set, which contains some linen cuirasses that I'd like to compare with this set, but also their Athenian mercenary hoplite box, which I have kind of at the top of my pile over there that I could assemble some models from, and then we can juxtapose them and see how they compare. All right, so I learned quite a bit putting these figures together. So just what you're seeing in the background here, these are all figures from one sprue of the new Greek hoplite set. On the left, these are actually hoplite bodies, but from the Carthaginian set. I'll talk about those in a second. And on the right are the older style hoplites from the Athenian armored hoplite box. So we'll compare those in just a second, but I did learn a few things putting the models together in the middle there. And I just wanted to share that with you. So first of all, I ran into what I thought was an issue initially, which is that, again, looking back at the schematics here, you can see, first of all, I deliberately tried to see if I could kind of gum myself up a little bit, in that I wasn't sure if there were any duplicates, like a spear arm or a left arm for any of these bodies, which could theoretically create a situation if you use one arm for one body and then another arm for another body. You could end up with one body that doesn't have any options left. Fortunately, that's not possible. All of these options for each of these bodies are unique. So you can't run into a situation where you accidentally use an arm for B2 and then a different arm for B4, which leaves B5 without any viable arms. Not possible. So that's excellent. Also, I found in putting these spears together that there were a couple of instances where it wasn't immediately clear what the arm was. So you can see like arm A18 here. You can see, I'm sorry, the lighting's not excellent, but you can see like A14 here. So like at a glance from looking at this, it's not clear if this arm is A14 or if this arm is A14, because you can see the lettering is, you know, right in between these two. But what Victrix has done, it's very clever, is that for each of these bodies, there's actually like one attacking pose arm and then one, call it like, it's still, I would call it an attacking pose, but it's instead of a thrusting spear, it's an upright spear. And you can see that again, like here, you've got an upright spear, and then here you've got a thrusting spear. So what that meant was that if I was ever unsure, Victrix has stacked these sprues in such a way that every thrusting spear has an at-ready spear or an upright spear right next to it. So like here, A14, right, I can tell by looking at the schematic and by cross-referencing the sprue, if I'm looking for a thrusting spear, this one is A14, not this one, because this one is not a thrusting spear. So very cleverly designed that way to clear up any potential ambiguities that might exist. So good work on that front from a design standpoint. The other thing I found when putting these together is it was much easier to attach the crests to the body after the head was on. It's a little counterintuitive, but I found there were a couple of instances where when I put the body, or excuse me, put the head on the body with the crest attached, I had accidentally put the crest too far back and it would bump against the body back here. So what I would recommend when you're putting these together is to put the head on first and then attach the crest to the body, because that will, by extension, ensure that you put the crest in the correct position and don't have it too far back and then pressing up against the body. But beyond that,
These are beautiful figures, guys. I'm really impressed with what they were able to achieve here. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, these are clearly designed to be in much more dynamic attacking poses than the older style ones. And you can see here just the sheer variety of poses you can achieve is super impressive. Just some really beautiful, crisp sculpts. Very little cleanup work that was required here. And one other thing I noticed, and I actually just because I wasn't sure if my mind was playing tricks on me, I mentioned in the Gripping Beast versus Victrix comparison video that one of the differences between Gripping Beast and Victrix is that the spears from Gripping Beast are, I think, too thick. However, the Victrix ones, while proportionally correct from a scale standpoint, are thin and are, I don't want to say prone to breaking. Like, I haven't had any breakages, but I've heard people report, having breakages or breakage issues with spears. One thing I noticed is that I think the spear thickness on these, it's like Victrix was listening, because the thickness here is, this spear here is from the Huscarl set. And you can see they're similar, but I would argue that the spear from the Hoplite is maybe like 20% thicker. Like, it's not not a huge difference, but for those of us who have put together lots of Victrix kits, the spears feel a little bit more substantive than, for example, these or the ones that come in the Viking set. So another improvement there. But yeah, the sculpts are excellent. They were super easy to put together. I didn't run into any issues other than the crests that I mentioned. That was more just a me issue. So when you're putting them together, again, put the head on first, then put the crest on. Now, in terms of how these scale up with the older style sets, you can see that let me move this one back. So again, this is from the Athenian Armored Hoplite set. You can see the design is similar. I would say the sculpting is better on the left. This is the new one. The scale is approximately the same. I would say this is a little bit bulkier than the older style ones. But they fit in together just fine, I think. If you had them ranked up and eating together, wouldn't be any issue. The one advantage that the older style set has is if you're looking for more of a ranked up marching pose unit, I think that the new models, while it's probably achievable, especially if you choose all like these style spears upright, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to achieve just like a unit marching or at ready kind of poses. These are much better suited for attacking poses than the older style kits are. So that's one strength of the older kit, is that because of the way the models are designed, they're in a much more static pose, and it leads to much more static looking formations when they're all ranked up together. The other thing that's curious, I didn't notice it until I was putting it together, is that what the old kit has that the new one does not are arrow skirts for the shields. So like this arrow skirt, sorry to confuse things, but this arrow skirt is actually from this kit, and these skirts don't exist in the new Hoplite kit. So if that's something that you're after, you're gonna have to get that from the older style kits. But as you can see, in terms of scale, they all fit together pretty well. Now, what I have over here these are bodies from the Carthaginian set. So I believe these bodies are also used in like the Hypaspist and the Phalangite sets. So what that would mean is that if you have some of those bodies laying around, you can see what I've done. I've taken the body from the Carthaginian set and taken a head and a sword arm from the Hoplite set. And then, as I mentioned, this arrow skirt is from the Athenian set. But you can see the kit batched together perfectly. So you can imagine there's a lot of variety that you can achieve. So again, even just from picking up this kit and, for example, the Carthaginian set, or if you wanted to get the Hypaspist, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and just use the bodies out of those, you could use the heads and all of the extra weapon arms from the Hoplite kit to add just a crazy number of poses to your unit just from bringing in these other bodies from other sets produced by Victrix. So another really beautiful set from them. I think this is an excellent addition. I think it's very clever the way that they've designed this to not only fit in with their contemporary range of ancients, but add more variety to their existing range of Greeks. So definitely something worth picking up from them if this is a period that interests you. So as ever, guys, thanks for stopping by, and until next time, happy gaming.